Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. My name is Cecilia Dowd. I'm president of the Press Club and a reporter with News 12 Long Island. And I'm excited to welcome Art Mochi, whom I've known for 20 years. He is with Newsday TV. He's one of the best writers I know. I'd like to start, Artie, by can you just give everybody a little bit of your background? Because I don't know it in its entirety.
Okay, from the beginning, graduated graduated Marist. First job in the business was with News 12 Long Island. From there, I went to Channel 5, the Fox 5 10 o'clock news. From there, I went to WPIX Channel 11, produced their morning show. After that, I went back to 12. Then I went to the Fox News Channel, and now I'm at Newsday TV. That's in it in a nutshell.
Awesome. And you've held different titles, obviously.
Yes, I mean, starting out as a PA at 12 and producing the morning show in both city stations, and now I'm an EP here at Newsday TV.
Okay, let's start out with the basics of TV writing because it's very different from other types of writing. So when people ask you, well, how do you do it? How do you write for TV? How do you explain what you do?
Okay, early on in my career, someone sat me down and said, "Listen, this has got to be like you're sitting at a dinner table explaining a story to someone that you know. It's a conversation. It is very uh the writing cannot be stilted. It's got to be conversational, and you have to get right to the point because in TV, anyone who works in TV knows 20 seconds is a long time for one story. It's not, I'm working at Newsday now for 5.5 years, and it's been a tremendous education to see how the print side goes about their work and how vastly different it is than what we do in television. We've got to get to the heart of the story, why people care about it right off the bat, and give them the information they need in an interesting way, right to the video that you're using or the graphics you're using, and then move on.
How do you get to it right off the bat?
Okay, yeah, when you look at a story before you write it, you have to say, why are we doing the story? Why is it important to the viewer? And you have to focus on that and try to make that incorporate in that in the lead. Um, for example, today, Governor Hochul, she had a press conference talking about how SNAP funding is because of the government shutdown is going to run out on the first this weekend, right off the bat. Millions of people are going to lose the program that helps them put food on the table because of the government shutdown. You have to get right to why this is important to your viewers.
Okay, so it's interesting. And I was considering, yes, 50-50, using myself as an example because I'm afraid of what you might say. But that was my story today at News 12. So let me just, I'm not going to make you guys watch the story or anything, but I started with the soundbite from an official, which we usually are taught, well, not always not to do necessarily. This wasn't a politician. This was the head of Pronto. And he had such a great soundbite. I led my story with this quote, we know there's a storm coming our way. We're trying to prepare and keep the community safe. Yay or nay? I
Uh,
won't be upset if you say nay.
and no, no, as you know, Virginia's on the line, and I've had this conversation with her. I'm in favor when you're doing a package of leading with a very strong soundbite as opposed to a reporter track. And I don't have a problem with us. We did it today as a VOSOT. We didn't put a field reporter on it, so we had to approach it differently. But no, I like opening with that type of strong soundbite.
Even though it's not, somebody who's impacted directly. He's a leader of a place where they're going to see people who are impacted.
He'll be impacted because he's going to see a much larger influx of people trying to get the services. It would be optimal to get a person who's going to lose these benefits who says something like, "I don't know what I'm going to do to feed my family." That is the strongest of all options. But short of that, the soundbite you used is not bad at all.
Okay, because I had somebody who's impacted, but I didn't feel as if his bites were as strong. So that's something I always wonder about.
Well, I mean that's what you that's what you opt for first and foremost. But if they're a bad interview, then you have to make the call.
While we're on the topic of leading with a soundbite, if it's good, I'm curious your thoughts on ending a package, a reporter package with a soundbite. I do it, but I know people who feel very strongly you shouldn't do it or make it a regular thing. You can only do it if it's very emotional. What do you think?
I think it's a case by case basis. As a general rule of thumb, I would avoid it. But if you've got an emotional soundbite that basically wraps up the whole essence of the story, yeah, I would do that.
Why would you avoid it generally?
Sometimes it feels, as a viewer, it feels very abrupt.
Okay.
So someone say something, done. Cecilia Dowd, News 12 Long Island. It feels a little abrupt, but like I said, that's an evaluation you make case by case basis. Uh, for the most part, somewhat stay away from it, but there are many instances where it will work.
I don't want to put you on the spot, but I feel like you will have an immediate answer to this one. Common mistakes people make.
Uh, well, first off, the worst of them is spelling. The first thing that any viewer is going to notice, and this happens every place, is a misspelling in the banner or the font. Right away, people look at that and say, "What are they? They don't know how to spell. They don't have spell check." That is something right off the bat. Uh, Being too verbose, too wordy. You need to cut through all of it and get right to the point, get the information out, and let people know what they came for. If that's one of the biggest differences between print and between TV writing. A print copy, you can be so much more detailed, and the sentence structure can be so much longer. With TV, one of the basic rules try to achieve, it's not possible all the time, is one thought, one sentence.
Oh,
Simple. One thought, one sentence. It's not always achievable, but if you try to do that, that is going to make your writing a lot tighter.
good advice. And also I've heard fourth grade level, fifth grade level, sixth grade level. Who's the audience? Like what kind of level does a TV writer write on?
I don't know if you can assign like a fifth grade level,
Yeah.
but it's not New York Times. It's how you would communicate with one of your peers.
I'm curious your thoughts on attribution. So typically, I think, Mr. Medor, you can correct me if I'm wrong, and I see Joy too. With a newspaper, you attribute everything, every line. We try to in TV. I have a friend in radio. They have such little time to tell the story that they do the attribution once and that's it. How does it work in TV? Can you get away with doing the attribution once and having another sentence without?
It depends on how the script is structured. There are times where you will use one attribution to cover two different facts or aspects of the story. That doesn't work all the time, but it's how the script is structured.
So
You
let's say
can't
if
you
you
can't do an attribution up top and then 20 seconds later say something as fact that needs to be attributed to authorities and just
okay.
leave it on its own. You can't do that.
But if it follows out of the attribution and it's just a secondary line, it might work.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes that could work, but you have to be careful with that.
Okay.
I
Um,
mean, if you think about it, police say so and so was caught driving drunk, and officers say, and after they were caught, they blew a blah blah blah. That's a two parts. That's a compound sentence, but it's I that would fall under the single attribution.
okay. I'm curious if anyone comes to mind, if we have any students here, and I don't know, who you think maybe a big name or somebody locally, who are some really good writers you think people could look to? Just it could be a local news reporter, it could be a big time news reporter or an anchor. I don't know. I'm just wondering if anyone stands out.
Do you want me to say your name?
No.
You know who I would say, and it is a News 12 anchor reporter. I think Kevin Marr is an excellent reporter, excellent writer. He really is clever.
Yeah.
He really does a nice job. Who else locally? I tend to like WABC, their writing.
And how you could it's distinct. How do you? how would you know it's a WABC writer if you're just listening?
Well, I watch all the network newscasts and the local newscasts, and I
Hmm.
tend to like their writing style. It's pretty much direct. They can be clever, but they don't force it. Uh, and
That's good to
I
know.
just find it a cleaner style of writing than most others.
You know who Kevin Marr once told me he emulates so much is Steve Hartman from CBS, who's great. Do you
He's
know Steve
fantastic.
Hartman has the
Yeah.
On the Road, I think it's called.
Yes.
And
I
for
mean,
those who,
he's
yeah,
a legend in this business.
he is a legend. But Kevin Marr is somebody I try to be more like. And just for those of you who don't even know, too, Kevin Marr is a fantastic editor. He does a lot of that stuff himself. A lot of his pieces you'll see he does himself. So yeah, but that's a good one. He's a great writer. And obviously we think you're a great writer. That's why you're here.
Thank you.
The rule of threes. Do you use that a lot in your writing?
I try when it comes up, I will talk to writers and producers and say you can't just leave it at two because it's a natural thing. Rule of threes. If you have three examples of something, the three effects of something include all three.
Can you just like give an example just in case there's anyone here who doesn't know what I mean? Like the rule of threes?
Now you're gonna make me.
Or maybe like I could probably find one or think of one. Oh, so authorities say robbers allegedly took crowns, uh rings and bracelets from the Louvre or something like that instead of just crowns and
Okay.
bracelets.
All right.
Maybe
So
that's
let's
not a
go.
good example.
Yeah, but let's go with that. If you've got, say, you've got a drug and gun bust,
Okay.
and you have video is a table full of things, you're not going to list all seven or eight things that are on the table. So you pick the three big guns, cocaine, and $250,000 in cash, among other things. That's an example.
Okay. Yeah.
Because in copy, it would eventually get a little monotonous if you list every single thing.
Um, okay. Best ways to this Chrissy had some that she had come up with, so I'm going to include those too. Best ways to attribute information from sources. And I don't know if this is what she meant by this, but also part of it is like you don't want to just keep saying the prosecutor said or the police say. So you could switch it up to authorities or use allegedly. Tell us how you would work with that.
Well, I've worked with media attorneys that technically say the word allegedly doesn't cover you legally.
Okay.
A direct attribution is the safest thing. But again, you don't want to be saying, police say, police say, police say. Prosecutors tell us. There's always another way to write it so that you're not sounding redundant. But it's very important. If that's where you got the information, the source, you have to say where you got it from.
What about if I tend to write the prosecutor said, and sometimes it'll get changed to prosecutor say, even though it was technically the prosecutor. Is that more of a TV thing that's acceptable? Because I know it's very different than a newspaper.
Uh, I would say I am not, and I know a lot of our old colleagues at 12 did this. I'm not a fan of that fake present tense. So and so
Explain.
going. No, they went.
Okay.
Prosecutors, prosecutor says, no, the prosecutor said. If you write it the way you would say it.
But
And
also, but my point was making it plural. But you bring up a great point too.
yes, if if you have an ADA giving you information and there's more than one ADA working on a case, you could probably get away with it. But I would say prosecutor in the case says blah blah blah.
Okay.
There's no doubt. It's very clear.
Okay. And can you explain more? Because that was one of my questions. In the tense you should be writing, like you
All
just
right.
said. Let's talk about that.
Okay. So a lot of times people call it anchor speak. So and so making a move. Well,
Yes.
if they already did it, they made the move. It's kind of like an cheap, easy way to make it sound active when it really isn't.
Okay.
And when I worked at Channel 5, I worked with an anchor, John Rowland, who I did not get along with at all. But he gave me some advice and he said, Artie, what we do is not meant to be read, it's meant to be said. So if you make put it into a phony present tense, it's going to come out weird. It's not going to sound right. It's not going to be comfortable. So
Okay.
and that's another big difference between print and what we do in TV. Print is meant to be read. That's the style it's written in. What we do is meant to be said. So it has to be different off the bat.
You've mentioned two people who've given you good advice. That sounded good. And also earlier you said about, I think you said like you're at the dinner table, right?
Yes.
Any other words of advice you've gotten from journalists along your career path?
Okay, here's the most important, I would say the most important one. And you've heard me say this before, and everyone who's worked with me has heard me say this before. Read your copy out loud. You don't have to yell it in the newsroom. Read it out loud because your brain works faster than your fingers. You know what you meant to write, but sometimes you omit things, miss words and whatnot. And you know what you meant to write, but you won't catch it until you read it out loud to yourself and you'll trip on it. You'll stumble on it and go, oh, I missed this word. It's so important. I tell that, I mean, a couple of times a week that we have a script that I'm looking through. I'm like, did you read this out loud? No. If
And
you do that,
not just for reporters, right? To be clear, for producers and writers and
absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, if it's bad grammar, you read it out loud, you're going to have a problem with it, and you'll say, okay, I have to change the way this is written.
so some other common mistakes that I know I think drive you, or I would always go to you for advice on one because for some reason I always did it incorrectly, was more than versus over. Come on, tell it to the group.
That's one of my hangups.
I want to hear more of your hangups.
It's it is so common. People say it now and don't think about it. Over 200 million people. Well, more than is for a quantity.
Yeah.
More than 200 million people. Over is you go over the mountain. That being said, common vernacular, people say over 50, whatever, all the time. That's just one of those, that's just one of those things that, gets my goat.
What else?
Uh, Using slang, I mean, it's our TV copy needs to be conversational, but it should still be, for the most part, English. So slang, as opposed to saying, $500, saying $500. That's just my personal thing.
Okay.
So
And what about words like, are we in a time now where you can say damn it on air, things like that? Not a full curse word, but
you could, but do you want to?
yeah.
You
Okay.
know,
Like if
unless it's a direct,
not
unless
a
it's a
reporter, if
direct.
it's a quote. Sorry, I meant if it's
Well,
a
if it's a direct quote that's really germane to the story, yeah.
okay.
If you've got someone who's arrested for a crime and get caught saying something really derogatory about the arresting officers, then it might be important to the story.
Okay.
But that's one of those judgment calls. If you're not going to include an F-bomb.
Yeah.
So, but if it's a direct quote that is important to the story, then you have to consider it.
Um, this is from Chrissy. Eliminating jargon from a script, tips to focus on clarity. I mean, we've hit on this a little bit, but
Jargon, if you're talking, I mean, the easiest one to do is if you've ever interviewed a police officer or a firefighter, it's cop speak or fireman speak, and
yeah.
it's not English. So you need to basically translate that into English and not use, we went into the building forthwith, and then we were forced to make a retreat. No one talks like that except for the firefighters. So I wouldn't do that in the script.
It's funny. We had a story recently and the guy was wonderful, but he was doing exactly that and speaking in and it was a 1080 on the something something hose and I was just oh my goodness. It was hard to get a good bite out of that. Okay. Oh, this is a good one. How to balance show versus tell in broadcast writing. Because a lot of times, and sometimes to this day, I don't even think this way. You don't have to say it, I guess, if you're going to show it, right?
Well, and this is from an Alan Goodman We always used to have talks about this. This Alan Goodman was our old executive producer at 12 that Cecilia and I work with. He was very good at what he did. And he said, this should be simple. If you're seeing something, you should be talking about it. You know,
Okay.
very simple. And that goes to another TV writing. If you're showing video, you should be touching it, referencing it so the viewer understands why they're seeing it.
Here's another one for you because I've seen people who edit the video along with the writing do this different ways. I've always been of the mindset that when you first identify somebody, you know, I'm not going to use a I'm going to use okay, Erin Stevenson. Her title changed, but I'm going to say managing editor Erin Stevenson because Erin, I can't think of your new title. Sorry. Managing editor Erin Stevenson. The first time I say that, people might not necessarily know who she is. So I've always been in the mindset you show her. But sometimes there are video editors out there who like to lead up and not show the person when you're first identifying them.
For the most part, and there are always exceptions, for the most part, if you're talking about someone being who has an important role in that story, I would prefer to see them.
Okay. That's what I think that to me that matters because then at least the viewer knows who it is going forward because we're often telling stories that are, you know, people won't know who they're about, right?
Yeah.
Somebody whose house may have gone on fire or somebody who's arrested or something like that. Tips for making every word count when viewers' attention spans are really short. I mean, and the other thing is, I think if you're reading a newspaper, you're sitting there and you're really mostly focused on reading the newspaper. But when people are watching TV, they're often cooking breakfast, they're cooking dinner, they're folding laundry, they're doing other things.
That's why that's one of the reasons why a lead is so important to catch people. I mean, if you're writing about a story that's going to affect Social Security in the lead, the government change, a big government change is going to affect how much money goes into your bank account. Everyone cares about their money, their bottom line. Try to hit them with something that's going to grab them right off the bat.
I was I heard from we had a News 12 Academy where we heard from different experts, and I want to see if you agree with the one expert told us that try to keep your voice tracked. So for those of you who don't know what a track is, that's when you hear the reporter's voice. Keep the tracks as short and tight as possible because you want to hear the sound from other people more. He said nap, but I believe he meant other people speaking more. Do you agree with that? Do we lose people when we talk too much?
I would, I'm in agreement with that. I think that letting the people who are involved with the story tell the story for the most part is the best way to do it
Okay.
because they're the ones directly involved. You're exposing the story to the viewing audience, but they're the ones directly involved. So I think it's a better option to limit tracks to the bare minimum and let the sound bites tell most of the story.
All right, guys, I want to open this up to questions because we have a good crowd here. So you can either put it in the chat. I think that's actually probably, Brendan, if you're on, we can actually probably let people ask. We just have to unmute you, or you could just put it in the chat, guys. And I can talk while I wait for that. I have my chat open. So, Artie, I don't want to pick on anybody again, but what is something you think newer journalists need to know about writing? Something that not necessarily a mistake, but something that younger journalists could do better kind of out of the gate.
Well, I will tell you a story about something that happened today. Joy Brown and I were in a conversation. Joy is now working with us at Newsday TV. So she's basically being an analyst and being a reporter now. And she filed a package and did a very good job. And she did something that most TV reporters wouldn't think to do. And I'll explain. It was about the rape ads that are being sent out in the race for Nassau County Executive. So we had Bruce Blakeman, the county executive, and we had Seth Koslow in here, and we got them to talk about that. So we had Seth saying he's lying. This was this was part of a paper in law school, and Blakeman saying, he's got a problem with women, blah, blah, blah. Typically, TV reporter would show the ads, you'd have the track, and you'd have them both giving their sides of the story. What Joy did, and this is part of the learning curve with print journalism, she went a step further and she said this it was just automatically what she was going to do anyway, but she went a step further and had our library research. They dug up that paper and she went and found the page and she went and found the bibliography, the attribution to it, the footnote. And we showed that. So on top of just going, Blakeman says this is the case, he says this is BS because, I never even said those words. She went a step further and actually tracked down that law school paper and shows the footnote and the attribution to basically put it in context. And that's what a lot of TV journalists don't do. We fall short of that.
Well, that and I'm gonna go a little further with that too, is I think what a lot of people would argue is that these days, there's so little time because everything is, bosses obviously, it's not just bosses, it's the world we live in, right? We need
Yes.
to get it up right away. We need to get it
Yes.
out there. It's no longer you're waiting till 5 o'clock every day to watch the news or the 10 o'clock news or, it's like get it up now on social, on digital.
Well, I will admit this is a luxury we have here that we can do that. I've never been in a TV station or TV news organization that had a library where you could send an email. Can you look this up for me? We
Yeah.
have that here. So that's a very unique thing. And Joy used it in a fantastic way. So I think that's one thing for younger journalists to start thinking of, that it's not just he said, she said, point counterpoint. It could be put in context where you could say, yeah, they both say that, but this is what it really is. And here's the proof.
Okay, we have some questions. So
Sure.
from Christine Giordano, starting to venture into video interviews as part of podcasts. Any tricks to keep viewers fixated and interested in long form interview content?
That's a tough one, Christine. Because everything we're seeing now, they do studies and and all the trends for the most part are showing that the shorter form is what people are gravitating to. As much as I hate to admit that, uh, that's doing long form. And I'll tell you, at Newsday we do a lot of long form. We do documentaries, half hours, things like that. It's a tremendous amount of work, and keeping a viewer's interest for that long takes a lot. Finding the video, making the graphics that make sense and makes it more interesting. So
Yeah.
that is not an easy thing to do. I'm not saying it's not worth it, but that's not an easy thing to do, especially in today's climate where everyone is on Instagram doing this. So that's fighting an uphill battle with that. I mean, you have the long form productions that are very popular now. The crime files that 12 does, all the ID investigation discovery. That's long form. That's like a current fad or craze. It's generating a lot of interest. But outside of that, I don't see many of the long form productions that are doing all that well. It's all basically going shorter. And
Some
I
pod, but
hate
then
to
it's
admit that.
podcasts now. Like I know Jill successfully does it. I think Jill Wagner. If those of you guys check
No,
out
yeah,
Mo News, their news podcast is really good.
I mean, the podcast, I mean, just take whether you like him or hate him, take Joe Rogan. He appeals to a certain segment of the population. That's 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 who he is, and that's who listens. Jill's podcast also the same thing. It's very narrow focused to serve a certain part of the community. You can carve out a niche just like that, but that takes a lot. And to Jill's credit, she's very good at it.
So, Christine, I don't know if you can write in the chat, but you said that you're starting to do the video interviews as part of podcasts. Is it just like a straight up long interview, or is it something that you would chop down? I'm just curious, and we can come back to you because I'm not sure if it's what I'm thinking, where it's just kind of like the whole podcast with the person is on video, or if it's something you would edit down after and then put out. But uh, oh, you edit it. Oh, straight up. Okay, yeah, that's what I already was thinking. Okay, so straight up, you would do that. Okay. It's kind of Jill doesn't necessarily always do interviews on hers. It's just straight news, but it's straight video. I think they do on that.
Yeah.
All right. Mr. Medor, are there some books, reference materials that a novice to script writing should read to learn more?
Obviously, the starting point is Strunk and White, Elements of Style. That's a little old school, but that's a very good starting point. Then the AP Style book, which also a lot of times I have issues with some of their style, but those are very good starting points. I think
I have
those
one
like
too.
building
Sorry.
blocks, building
Yeah.
blocks.
Sorry, I thought you were done. I have one, guys, which I love, Aim for the Heart. It's written by Al Tompkins. He's from Pointer, and it's a great book. Art, I don't know if you've read it, but
I
it's
have not.
called Aim for the Heart. I usually have it in front of me, and of course, right now I don't. But sorry, guys. Rebecca Grapevine, I'm a print reporter, but some of my best friends are TV reporters. What can we learn from you all? Top 2 to 3 tips.
For TV writing, uh, get right to the point. The lead,
Yeah.
I mean, don't waste time. Don't try to set up a lead. Get to the lead. Hit people with the information or the aspect of that story that's going to grab them.
Um, and I'll just throw in what can we learn from you all? This doesn't have to do with writing, but when you're doing an interview, always ask the person at the end if they have anything to add. Christine Nsinga taught me that. She was a reporter with News 12, and it's the best advice ever because you always get the best information, the best soundbite. I would say 95% of the time, at least, when you ask people that question.
That is very true. And we do something at Newsday TV called debriefs, where we interview our reporters like James Medor on a business story because he has a better understanding of that story than anyone else. So we'll interview him. We'll have questions for him. But when we're done, say, James, is there anything I'm missing? Anything else they need to know? And you're absolutely right.
Yeah, and Rebecca, I don't know if you are also wondering about reporting, but one more thing that I can say is because I've seen reporters do this in TV, there's some reporters who will just go up, ask the question, walk away, be kind of really abrupt. And I think the if you show people that you're interested not just in getting something out of them, but in chatting with them and just spending a minute or two before the interview, a minute or two after, people will respond, just in the best way possible. So. Let's see here. Do you think the walkout at the Pentagon should be a wake-up call to all journalists to rely less on pressers and more on research and digging for sources? That's from David Goodman.
Well, I will tell you that's another thing that I've learned working here at Newsday within a newspaper, print journalism. Not, I mean, for our purposes, if you're doing a 20-second reader on a house fire, your first draft of it off of a press release is probably fine, but then there should be follow-up calls to get more information and not just leave it at the press release. Because if you leave it at the press release, you're going to be missing more often than not other information that's really important. And that's another thing here. For the most part, they don't write off of press releases. They're making calls and doing digging in addition to that press release. So that is important.
And also, I think Art, you know this too, is often you might go to a story or do your research and make your calls and find out that the press release either left out some major things, might have errors in it. It's
Yes. Quite
there's
often, quite often PIO makes an error
yeah.
and you don't catch that unless you do a little digging.
And it could be PIO for anything. Obviously, for those maybe if you're not a reporter in here, PIO is just the public information. It could be for anywhere. Every, agency has one. Whether it's like a state agency, the police, even schools have public information offices. So that's what that stands for is public information office. Let's see here. Okay, I'm the media. This is from Isabel. I'm the media advisor to all the student media and journalism groups at Stony Brook University. One of our great former coworkers, Brian Jingaleski, works with you now, and Kelly's over there too.
Yeah.
And we are creating a podcast boot camp for the students. They will be recorded, not streamed, but then broadcast on our radio station. And any tips are appreciated.
Uh, here's something that I'm hesitant to give advice from because I'm not that. submerged in the podcast field. I listen to some podcasts, but I don't want to give advice because that is not my forte, and that's not something I deal with and work with consistently. So I wouldn't want to give anyone advice that way.
Well, you know who I could put you in touch with is one of my good friends is Sophia Hall, who is a radio reporter. And it's really funny because we're always going back and forth. We talk on the phone all the time, and I'll be like, it's a great story. And she's like, don't you remember I'm radio, I'm not TV. So where I'm thinking of like, I don't know, let's say they're releasing all these bats or something into the, she's like, yes, but I'm radio, you know. So there are definitely definitely things that she could probably tell you that we wouldn't think
Yes.
of. But I promise, I'll put my email in the chat. I'll put my Gmail in the chat, and I can get you in touch with Sophia. She'd be happy to help.
She would be a better person to ask about that than I would.
Me too. Although I love to listen to podcasts, I've never done one.
Yeah.
Um, Actually, you know what? If you give me one sec, you know what? I don't want to do this for everybody because you came for the TV writing, but Isabel, I actually was just at the Society of Professional Journalists conference, their year annual conference, and I actually did do like a podcasting session with this great woman from ABC News, and I took pictures of her slides and I wrote down the notes so I could actually get that to you. That would be really cool. Okay. So I'm gonna just ask more questions right now, guys, because I we could go to 7:45. I think that would be good. Oh, you're welcome. Um, okay. Have let's talk about mistakes because we all make them in our
Mm.
writing. Um, and we're all going to, I think. But what is our best to what are the things we can do to try our best to prevent any real major mistakes?
Reading out loud for a writer, and it's you really have to pay attention to the information and the facts. I mean, that can't be, and everyone needs a copy editor. I don't care how good you are at what you do.
Um,
A second set of eyes is invaluable because everyone makes mistakes from time to time. And if you're acting by yourself, every once in a while something might get through. Whether it be your anchor, they need to be reading in and asking questions, or you have a copy editor. A second set of eyes is invaluable if you have that luxury.
Even the best of the best make mistakes. I mean,
Absolutely.
and I mean, we've seen it, you see it at a local level, but you see it even at the network level. I mean, there have been mistakes.
Network level, they usually have a person who sits there and is a copy editor.
Yeah.
So, like I said,
But
local,
mistakes are even still made there, right?
yes, but they're less than a local. Local
Yeah.
stations, for the most part, don't have that luxury anymore, don't have copy editors. You're relying on the anchors to look over the copy as well.
And guys, I'll tell you, I'm so embarrassed that I the other day was on a big story and I misspelled the an officer's name and I should not have misspelled it. It was a unique spelling of a common name and I think usually I'm what I do and my advice would be is um even if the person's name is John, you could spell John John. Even if it's Mary, who knows? I know a Mary who's Mari. You can have a Jenna. One of my best friends is Jenna and spelled Gena. Always ask the person how they spell their name. That's like one of my biggest tips. The problem is sometimes, like if somebody's injured, you're not interviewing them, but you're putting them into your story, which is going to wind up on the website where you have to know the spelling. Sometimes you have to go through others to get it. But in this case, I just thought I knew it because I'd covered him before. And it was Brendan. And I already, you probably know the story. I don't really need to get into the whole story, but it was Brendan and I spelled it A-N and it was O-N. Brendan Owen, and I was mortified.
Yes. We
I
actually double checked that.
yeah, and I didn't
It
this
looked weird
time,
to me, and we had to go back and yes.
which I'm embarrassed to say. And my boss messaged me in the morning, and then I wrote an email to all the producers on the morning show because I think they frantically had to change the we call if you're not familiar when you see someone's name on the screen, it's a font. Some people call it a chyron. And my web copy. So that was I was just so embarrassed because usually that's the one thing I'm pretty good at is getting names right. But it's just a second set of eyes is always great, but also just, if you sound silly asking someone how to spell their name, don't. People laugh at me all the time when they'll say, I'm John. And I'm like, well, I have an uncle who spells it Jon. It's not always going to be John and these days, you have so many names that might phonetically sound like they'd be spelled one way and they're spelled a completely different way. Okay, Artie.
Okay.
We
Script writing.
have, yeah, go ahead. Do you approach script writing the same way if the story is a feature versus news?
Maybe not, because it depends on the subject matter of the feature. If you're doing a feature that's emotional, you wouldn't write it the same way as a hard news story that you're telling in 20 seconds. You want to pick up on the emotion. Say we did a special on breast cancer survivors, and that's a different type of writing because the tone needs to be different, the feel needs to be different. You're telling people's personal stories, so you're not going to come out with a hard lead, boom, boom, boom. So yes, it I think is in many times it is a different approach. You want to play upon what is the appeal of that feature you're doing, and you want to play off of that. So yes, a lot of times feature writing is different than regular hard news.
To add to that, Artie, I'm curious what you think about this, and it's something that I've been doing, and they've at work have been okay with me doing it. Curious your thoughts. So we are always taught in TV that you always identify somebody first by their full name, obviously, but then subsequently by their last name.
Yeah.
So Cecilia Dowd opened up a bakery, and then later Dowd says it's doing well. I have changed when I've been doing with the hard news stories, I stick to that format. But when I'm doing a softer story, like, okay, um, Erin, I'm using your name again because you're here. Erin Stevenson, Erin Stevenson broke the Guinness Book of World Records for baking 1,000 cupcakes. Stevenson said they taste great. I now say Erin says they taste great because it's like there's a familiarity
More
I think you
personal.
want,
Yes, I agree. If
and
it's a
but not all
feature,
bosses do agree. So
yeah, I happen to agree. If you're doing a softer story, it's about a person, what they're doing, what they're going through. It gives it a more personal feel. So my personal opinion is yes, I would do that, but not in a hard news story. No.
yeah, not and especially if it's like somebody who's been arrested and a criminal or a public official, you're not going to call like I asked this question of this great CNN reporter over the weekend, and he agreed too, like you did, and he said, obviously you're not going to refer to Donald Trump as Donald or or Kathy Hochul as Kathy, but for stories like where you're telling just a personal, like a local story on somebody doing something good, maybe it might sound weird just to use their last name. So I'm
Yeah, I
glad
mean,
we agree on that.
I'll use the example of the breast cancer special show we put up. We use their first names. The women involved, we use their first names because it feels more personal.
Yeah. Because there are still the old school thought is that you don't do that, but I think it's
Yes.
changing. I think it's changing. I'm glad to hear you say that. Um, Rebecca says, "What about working quickly?" To my point about making mistakes, it's easy to fact check on a long deadline, but on a quick one, it's tough, and that's true, especially for people who are editing. Like sometimes I edit my own video now. Artie, what is your advice on that? Because you're also doing stuff in a rush.
Yes, I think that's an uncompromising portion of what we do. Fact checking has to be there, period. I mean, if you're working on a tight deadline, you have to make sure everything you're saying is correct. If there is something that you're not sure of, then you have to make a choice. Does it stay in your piece? That may be a choice that you make, whether
Yes.
you keep it in. If you're not sure, that's a risk. So, and we've all worked on really tight deadlines. When there's a breaking news story, you need to get the anchor something to say because they can't tap dance forever and just ad lib forever. You've got to get them something, and you can't feed them wrong information. One, it's a disservice to the viewer. Two, the anchor is going to hate your guts and come out and scream at you because you made them look like an idiot.
And for me, Rebecca, what I would say is in hindsight, and this it was a crazy day, but I had the time. This was just it was a bad mistake on my there's just I don't even know if I had had more time. Like I'm gonna be honest, this was just me thinking I was right. I don't really have a good excuse for it. I wish I did. But yes, there are times in especially in like breaking news where Artie's right. Like you keep, it's uncompromising. You have to do that. So what I would say is if I don't have time, I might call my assignment desk. Erin Stevenson runs it. She's on this and say, "Hey, Eric, can you do me a favor? Can you spell check a couple names for me or, double check my script while I'm doing A, B, and C and maybe make it like a team effort." We've done that before, helping each other out just to make sure. Or like Artie said, if you're not sure, maybe don't include that yet. The other thing that I think is really important, and I do think people are way more forgiving or for the most part more forgiving, is if you be transparent. If you make a mistake, own up to it. I mean, and just be transparent.
Absolutely. You can't act as if it didn't happen. You have to address it.
I didn't have this particular officer's number, but I have a good family friend's number, and I actually texted her and I said, "Please apologize that I spelled his name wrong." So, oh, Scott, thank you. Okay, Scott signing off. There was another one. Oh, Rebecca had also asked if we had any more interview tips.
I
My
mean,
biggest one, I think, aside from asking at the end if they have anything to add, is just making them comfortable and showing. I'm of the mindset that you can relate to almost anybody on some level, right? Like, oh, you have a relative in Ireland. I went to Ireland last summer, or um, you went to Catholic school all your life. So did my mom. I mean, I just think there's ways to I don't bond is kind of a weird word, but I can't think of a better word right now, but to just kind of bond or say, "Whoa, me too." There are ways where you can make people more comfortable because a lot of people think we're not like them, and they're like, "Oh, you're in TV news," or "Oh, you're a journalist," or "Oh, you're this," and they don't realize we're all, just trying to make our way through this crazy thing
and
called life.
Virginia is on this call now, and she is wonderful. I mean, she does some of the most heart-wrenching stories, and she gets these people to sit down and talk with her and tell their stories. And she's amazing at that.
She's a really good writer too, Virginia. Artie, and you've been in the city too. Have you ever seen any no-nos interview wise?
I could tell you horrible stories, which I don't know if I should because this is being recorded.
Oh, well, you don't have to name names.
Well, in and this happened at a station, and I asked a particular reporter, how do you always get the suspect or the perp who's being walked by police to react to you, to say something to you?
Hmm.
And they told me that they would get close enough and they pinched the perp and would have the camera rolling when that person reacted and flipped
Oh
out,
my
because
Lord.
that is as unscrupulous as you can get, but that's a no-no. They would do something to this person who was being walked just to get them react, knowing that the camera was rolling.
Oh my gosh. That's wild.
And this person did it all the time.
Oh, and by the way, that's so terrible. Another thing I think is important, especially if there's younger journalists too, is if you're yelling out things at a perp walk, you don't ever want to say, "Why'd you do it? Why'd you kill her? Why'd you kill him?" Right? Because that happens believe it or not, that happens all the time where people will yell that stuff out, and photographers will yell it out, reporters too. But the thing is, you have to remember they're still presumed innocent. They're only charged. So, I'll if I yell out, you yell out, "Did you do it?" Or "What do you have to say to the charges?" Right?
And and I will tell you another downside to doing that is that the police will not be a fan of yours, because I know I have personal friends who are
Yeah.
police officers who always grab my ear and say, "What the hell is this person thinking?" All they do is shout at the person being walked.
Yeah. So, and Alice says, "Look into their eyes and say thank you for your time."
Being
And
sincere.
yeah, and what's another good thing? Is I stay in touch with a lot of people I interview because their stories don't go away just because you might tell it one day. Um, and then you can really get good stories out of so many people. Obviously, you can't stay in touch with every single person you ever interview, but I think it's worth it to try to stay as much in touch with people that you think will have a lot more to say in the future. Their stories continue, whether they're fighting a terrible disease or they're advocating for a cause. I'm gonna give it one more minute and see if we have any more questions Did I miss anybody? I hope.
Any questions about experiences or whatever? I'm happy to answer honestly.
Artie has the best stories too.
But again, this is being recorded, so I can't
I
say that.
know. All right, well, that's wild about the
Yes. And this was a well-known New York City crime reporter.
oh boy. Rebecca said this was odd. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Oh, most common blunder. We talked a little bit about now I
I mean, the spelling and the fonts and the and the graphics, that's
yeah.
one of the most common things. What else?
As soon as you said that, my heart dropped too, because that's what I just did.
James, good luck with that. They're politicians.
Oh, this is okay. Well, yeah. So we'll keep with the blunders. Any more blunders? Because now we have two more good questions.
Uh, okay, saying something juicy and then saying, "Don't quote me." How do you do that? And this is, I mean, you can't quote. I think that gives you a thread to start, doing research that if you can get someone else to corroborate what they said and do it that way. But if they say, this is off the record, it's got to be off the record.
But she's saying they say something juicy and say, don't quote me. I think what she's saying is they might say it after. Is that what you're saying, Alice? Like they say it and then they're like, oh, don't quote me. Because I've had that happen.
Yeah, but then you wouldn't go and use that, right?
But you technically could, I think, if they don't preface it.
Yeah, if
Usually
they're
we
saying
respect, usually you respect them, I guess, right, Art?
yes,
Yeah.
but also that gives you something to start investigating and looking into. And then if you can get that same information, that juicy tidbit through other people, then you don't have to worry about it. But then again, that's tough to do on a 5 o'clock deadline when you're trying to turn a package and get it in for the show. That is not easy.
Rebecca says that happens to her a lot as a print reporter. If it's a public person, I'm not sympathetic. I think it also depends like what they say. Like, is
If it's
it,
inflammatory or it's slanderous to someone, you really have to be careful. But
but technically you can use it if the off the record comes after, but I usually if they say off the record not like an hour later, but right after, I usually respect that. I mean, it doesn't happen to
if
me
they,
that often, but
to me, and again, I'm not the one out in the field. I'm the one in the newsroom. But if someone were to ask me if they said, "Is this off the record?" then I think you have to respect that.
if you say it at the beginning, you mean, right? Like if you set it up like that.
I mean, even afterwards, I would say, "Oh, I was just telling you that on background, please. That's off the record." I would still try to respect that.
Okay. Let's go to Mr. Medor's question. Tips for interviewing politicians
Oh,
to get them to be genuine. We skipped over. I know you laughed.
I laughed at that because that's a tough thing to do. I mean, like I one time was sent out to interview Senator Alphonse D'Amato
Hmm.
when I was starting out, and I went in with my whole pad with all these questions, and he just stopped me and said, "This is what I'm going to say, and that's all you're getting."
Oh,
Yeah, and I was sitting there with Gabe Pressman, with
oh,
all these New York City, I mean, heavy hitters, people who've been in the business for decades, and I got the same thing that they did. So with the politician, you could try to be clever and basically try to ask the same questions several different ways. But if they're a polished politician, it's going to be, as you guys know, it's going to be difficult. Joy and James and Virginia, it's not going to be easy.
and often, unfortunately, their entourage. Sometimes there's an entourage of people,
Yeah.
advisors, and press people will just shut it down, which is frustrating. That's a hard one. I wish I had a better answer too, but it's very
Yeah.
hard. This is a good one. What do you do when they say something that you know will get them fired? Use it or warn them. I'd use.
It depends on how important it is to the story.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if you've got a controller who says, "Yeah, well, I did this, I hid this, tucked this away because no one needs to know about it," that's not something you could really hide. If a controller is playing fast and loose with the books, that's an issue. But again, that's something that you have to research and corroborate.
Christine, did you have an example? without naming names? Let's see. It's an interesting question. I've had people say things and then they'll, but it's never been like a public official who it's been people, like maybe somebody's son was bullied or something, and then they say something, then like, oh, I think that went too far. Like, you don't want, maybe it's not getting fired, but maybe you worried it'll impact where that kid is going at his private school. Is he going to get booted? I don't know. I think it depends on the kind of situation.
And you have to decide, is that piece of information so important that you want to compromise that whoever's life, or what their future is? That's
Yeah.
got to be weighed out as well.
Yeah. All right, we're almost done, guys. Oh, we have one more. When a contractor says things are not being built up to code.
All
Oh.
right. Yeah. Well, you take the contractor, then you get that as a quote, but then you go back to the buildings department and you ask them, hey, this contractor said this is not happening. Has it been inspected? Do you know this to be the case?
And I mean, I would say, Artie, don't you think that's an important story? Because if things aren't being built up to code, it could be dangerous. So
Absolutely, but you may have a disgruntled developer who is
yeah,
pissed off that they didn't get that contract, and they may be saying that.
yeah.
So you really have to check on that.
Investigate all angles because everybody
Yes,
has, you could be pessimistic and say, well, everybody has an angle. I guess
that
somewhat
that
true, you
that
know?
would be important piece of the story, but that's something you'd have to go and find out if it was really the truth.
Yeah. Um,
All of these things are not easy when you're on a deadline.
Artie, I have one more question about, oh, she said you've checked the code book and they're right, but the contractor would get fired. Oh, so
If
the contractor's basically saying like maybe he's part of like maybe is it his company that's not built, like he's the whistleblower, I guess, is what you're saying. Would you use it? Yeah, okay.
Oh, so the whistleblower.
So he's the whistleblower for the company.
So that's an interesting situation. That is something where that's very important. Right, but doesn't know it. They don't know that they would get fired. You,
Brendan, can you unmute Christine and we could have her say that, just explain this real quick?
yeah, because that's an
Okay.
interesting one, because
I
if
want to
that's
make sure
the
we
case
understand this right.
and that's creating an unsafe situation, that's the story.
Yeah,
So you wouldn't be doing
exactly.
Oh,
you
there
would
you are, Christine.
yeah.
We hear
All
you.
right.
Yay. Hi.
Hi. No, yeah, that was the story. It was like, do you get the guy fired, or do you just go with the
Or do
rule
you
book as your source?
or do you protect the source, use the information after it's confirmed, and protect the source?
Yeah,
Absolutely protect the source, because you're right. You don't want to get this guy fired for standing up and trying to do the right thing.
I see. So, but it would be a much stronger story if it came from a contractor and
Yes, but if you sources tell so and so the buildings aren't being uh, the tower isn't being built to code for this reason, and we went back to the town code and checked, and what he's saying is correct.
Okay, thanks.
Sounds like a good story there, Christine.
Yeah, yeah, it was
But
something.
if they're your source, you protect the source, but you corroborate the information, and then you use it.
Okay.
But what if he had said to her, to play devil's advocate, I'm willing to go on camera, but was nervous about it, but they actually say they're willing, maybe not realizing, Artie, that,
Put
you
them in
know,
silhouette. Don't
yeah,
shoot their face.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's that serious, we all know you can mask a voice.
Mm-hmm.
You protect their identity.
yeah.
We have a little time to play with. Another piece that came to mind. I interviewed Bill Cosby before it hit the news, all those allegations. And the question was, after looking him up, I could see that he had all those allegations, in various forms. But I was assigned a fluff piece for a magazine, right? An advertisement was placed against it. What would you guys have done as journalists, like having uncovered the allegations while
This
you're
is
writing a,
this is while everything was coming out about,
yeah,
and you were assigned to do a fluff piece.
yeah, before it came out, let's say.
Oh, if it was before you had any knowledge that
Well,
all
it
the
was,
accusations
yeah, it was scrappy knowledge. It wasn't like major media knowledge. It was in bits and pieces. So,
had charges been filed at that point,
no.
Hmm.
then that's a tough situation. That's where you'd have to talk to your news director or your editor and say, listen, this is the current climate surrounding Bill Cosby. Do you really want to do just a fluff piece? But contrary to that is presumed innocence until proven guilty.
Mhm.
So,
That's true. But you also could have gone there and asked
but then again,
about
would that
it.
have been included in the piece if
Yeah.
the reporter was assigned to do an entertainment feature?
Mhm.
And was the agreement look with Cosby's people? I'm assuming you or the magazine went through his team. Was there an agreement made? Which I did they say, oh, we're doing an entertainment piece? Like, I'm just curious.
Mhm. Yeah, it was like a pre-event piece,
Okay.
Oh, okay. So you had parameters on what you were allowed to ask ahead of time.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if you would have started asking questions about the accusations, you would have been escorted out right away.
Pretty much. Yep.
Yeah.
I would have maybe talked to my bosses to see if like maybe even you go, but you hold off on I don't know. It depends on how strongly you felt that the knowledge, I think these accusations coming forth, obviously, like Artie said there were no charges, but Artie, what about like talking to your bosses about maybe
Absolutely.
feeling it out and going and holding,
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
uh, great questions.
Thank
There's
you.
no easy answers to a lot of these too. Except I say like, whenever I worry about any of this, I go to my bosses, and we talk it out.
Mhm.
Rebecca says media ethics on the fly. That's true. But I always there's usually there's already you're a boss, but there's somebody you can go to still above you. And I think that's a good idea to talk it out too. And most media organizations have lawyers too. So sometimes it might get to a level where you want to ask your lawyer.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
always keep in mind, attorneys for media organizations are oftentimes more interested in preventing having to go to court to argue on behalf of a story rather than just saying you did it right, I'll fight for you. So that when you go in to talk to an attorney, have that in your mind that they're looking to avoid the fight, but not, they're not necessarily saying you're on the money, I'm behind you, we'll fight this if need be.
Mhm. Mhm.
I have one more question, Artie. Your thoughts on, let's say you're covering a really good trial. You're a reporter covering a really good trial, and cameras aren't allowed in the courtroom.
Uh-huh.
How many quotes, obviously you make it pretty with a graphic. How many quotes for a TV story when are too many?
I mean, if you're doing a package,
Yeah.
I
So
would
guys, a
probably,
package is usually a minute 30 for those of you who don't know. That's the whole reporter piece. It's usually a minute 30.
yeah, that includes reporter track, sound bites, graphics, everything, nat sound. I would probably say, just rule of thumb, but if it's a particularly juicy trial, I would say probably two. You pick your two strongest and go with that because if you think as a viewer, you're seeing graphic after graphic after graphic, that becomes monotonous and it's not interesting.
Yeah.
But you
I
want to you
yeah.
want to pick the ones that are going to hit a home run and make the most of them.
Like if the judge says you're a menace to society at a sentencing, that's good, but you don't want too much of that, right? You want one
That's
good
a great one, just like that.
yeah. All right, Artie, in closing, any advice? You gave some great quotes tonight that I wrote down.
Uh, watch and read everything. I mean, in the current climate of social media, far too many young people are just watching TikTok and Instagram and believing what they see, and it's really it's awful. I tell my kids, read everything and make up your own mind and question everything. I mean, it's a lot of legacy media too. You need to approach it with a discerning eye and say, okay, I'm listening. I understand what they're saying, but are they telling the whole story? And I think you should approach everything that way.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you. So everybody, thank you for joining. I hope you guys had a good time. Oh, thanks, Rebecca. Rebecca says thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Wait, you're a Southern print reporter. What do you think of our Long Island accents? Thank you. Thank you guys. Awesome. Artie, that was awesome.
Oh, good.
Thank you
I'm
for
glad.
doing this.
No problem.
You're one of the greatest writers. So we